So welcome everybody. This is us on week 3 of Startup Next Steps. This is our final week in this little chunk, and then we're going to have a break week in the form of our co-working day next week. And we are live from the Technology and Innovation Centre in Glasgow. Welcome to those of you that are here in person. And you may have heard from the comments on Zoom that we did have a very sad dog banishment. So we're all mourning that happening. Stumbled at the first hurdle there. So yeah, week 3. Today we're covering product fundamentals and how to grow. And as I say, this is us kind of a third of the way through at the end of the session before we have our break week next week. So today, I'm sure you're expecting at this point that we're going to do some speed networking to begin with, just to get everybody warmed up a little bit before we get into the full session. Oh, come on in. So I'm just doing quick welcomes, and then we'll get onto the speed networking. I'll run through the housekeeping just to make sure that everybody knows what's happening. And I believe that Sally was keeping people right online, and I can see lots of very well-behaved people adding correctly to their names. So thank you very much. But I will be very shortly handing over to Tadas, and he's going to go through his startup journey, experimenting towards product market fit. So a lot of crossover leading on from last week with Andy. We'll have a very short break. We're just going to have a 5-minute break between that. Then we'll move on to an activity of building our own experiments. I've got a bit more information about the workbook coming up, but you will need that workbook this week more than you have in previous weeks. Then we'll have a 10-minute break and move on to product beyond MVP. And looking at road mapping and product-led growth before wrapping up, hopefully on time at 4:45. Oh, and I forgot to mention, even though I've put it on my slide nice and clearly there, we are recording this event. So if you're in the room and you move around, the back of your head might appear on the camera that's just at the back there. And obviously, if you are asking any questions, then you will appear in that. But just let us know if you don't want to be featured, and we'll make sure that we chop you out. But we want you to feel like you can take part while you're here. So yeah, before I hand over to Tadas Labudis, I will just mention that he is a product leader and an exit founder, but I won't say too much about him. I'll leave him to introduce himself properly. And so just some general housekeeping. I'll just try and speed through this so we can get into the networking, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with it at this point. But like I say, we are recording. We'll be sharing all those resources tomorrow once we've done the quick edit. We're on a hybrid setup, and today we are in a brand new venue. So yes, please be patient with us as we figure this out. You've got Sally online. He'll be sharing all the links and also that workbook that I mentioned. So yeah, we're in the Technology and Innovation Centre in Glasgow right now. You've got an awful lot of us in person. I think we've got 1-to-1 ratio at the moment. So I'm Claire, you've got Molly on the tech at the back, Nawal's here, and also Amelia. So if you are joining into the Zoom call, please just pop TIC into your name so that Sally doesn't end up trying to add you to a breakout room. Coming up very shortly. There's no fire alarm planned, but the fire exit is just down this way, just following the little green man that's running. The toilet's pretty well signposted, but in this direction, there is an accessible toilet that we can use. If you have any questions or comments during the session today, I'm going to come running around with a microphone to make sure that the people in Zoom can also hear you, and they'll also be getting pumped into the room from that speaker at the back. I mentioned about the camera, and of course, don't feel like you can't leave the room if you're needing to take a toilet break or just get some fresh air or anything during the session. You're very welcome just to head out when needed. And just that is the Wi-Fi there. So under TIC conferences and the passwords, Kelvin Grove with a capital K, and also on the window there in case it disappears now. So yeah, I see there are some watch parties. I can see plenty of people in the Edinburgh hub there. So yeah, if you also have joined on to the Zoom, please just make sure that you've stuck that hub location in there, but I won't go into that too much as I saw that Sally was chatting to you about it earlier. And if you're online only, yeah, pop into your display name that you are online or at home. That is really helpful. And I can see that my slides have not updated. Sorry, I've said at the bottom there, we're trialing opt-in for breakout activity, but we're not going to do that today. But it seems like it'll be a lot easier with people properly labeling themselves. Yeah, Tadas will let you know about when questions are welcome, and we've also got everybody's faces on the screen in front of us, so you're very much part of it here. And so, yeah, just as I was saying, you can use the raise hand function, and Tadas will keep you right about whether or not he will be stopping for questions during, or if there'll be designated spots for that. But please pop things into the chat, and we will keep everybody right to make sure all those questions get answered. And yeah, so the digital workbook for the people in person, we've got some printouts. I'll bring you some over in a second. But the digital workbook, you can use this QR code, and also Sally is going to pop into the chat. But basically, we want to make sure that you're able to use that because it's quite interactive. There, on the first slide, we've got like little post-it notes, and then on the second one, there's kind of boxes for text. So yes, just to make sure that you are aware that you will need this today, there are 2 different activities. Oh, sorry, I just saw you. I'll hang back there for a wee second for you with the QR code. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, we're going to go very quickly into the speed networking right now. So as always, we've got a couple of prompts for you, and we're going to give you some time prompts as well. So the 2 questions to take into the breakout rooms today, these are also mentioned in the workbook so that you have reference when you're in those rooms. So did last week's session change how you think about product market fit? If yes, what? And if no, did it solidify anything for you? And then the second question of what are your priorities for this in the next 3 months? And we're going to go again with our hot seat. So we'll give you prompts for the first person to answer these 2 questions. Second minute for people to ask questions or feedback on what that person said. Then we'll let you know to switch person, and we'll try and keep you right. But just as a reminder, it's always going to feel a little bit chaotic because it's so quick, and it's just to try and warm you up for the session. So I'm going to start a timer. If Sally, you're good to open up the rooms online. Lots of really good conversations happening there, and I felt very rude, but it's all meant to feel a bit chaotic just so that you're warming up and ready for the session. So yeah, I hope that was fun for everyone and not too much chaos. And yeah, it's just time for me to pass along to Tadas now. Thank you.
Yes, so my name is Tadas, and thanks everyone who paid their word to the Strathclyde University to be here in person, and also hi to people connecting from home or other code-based hubs. So today we're going to focus on a topic of product fundamentals and how to grow, definitely leaning into the session you had before on product market fit, perhaps going a little bit deeper into how to work towards product market fit and what it means, how to measure it, and also a couple of topics about what to do after you found product market fit. Once you got lucky, how do you go from there? How do you grow the product beyond that point? So as Claire already went through the agenda, I'm going to share a short version of my own founding story, so you know where I'm coming from. And then we're going to dive right into experimentation and working incrementally towards product market fit. I'm going to share an example from my own startup. Going to take a short break. And then we're going to jump into an interactive activity where you will be able to design your own experiments to validate the riskiest assumptions, perhaps leading from some of the speed networking discussions we just had, and kind of actually working towards that. And then after another short break, we will jump into product beyond MVP stage, and covering 2 topics of road mapping and product-led growth and mechanics you can build into your products to grow, and a wrap up. So my own startup journey is about 13 years so far. I started my entrepreneurial endeavors at university. So as you can gauge from my accent, I'm not from Scotland, but I've lived in Scotland close to half of my life. I come from Lithuania, and I came to Scotland to study, but very shortly, as you might remember, it was a recession in 2008. I lost my job at my part-time job at the hotel I was working at. And then I jumped head first into entrepreneurship because I felt that's the most interesting and kind of immediate way of generating revenue I needed to support my living alongside studies. So at university, I launched a number of ventures. I started an e-commerce store selling percussion instruments and drums. I'm a drummer. So it kind of made sense combining websites with drums, and I put my own drums as the initial stock, and then kind of bought and sell stuff as I went along. Very simple business. And then we wanted to get a little bit more ambitious. So I got a few friends and we started a social network at the university. You can see here a photo from our launch party. I've spoken to 0 users before building and launching this product. And whilst it was a fun experience, I learned how to code and other things. It was not a success. I never thought about how we're going to monetize the thing, or the fact that students are perhaps not the best population to target, unless you're selling housing. In that case, it's great. We pivoted to another idea where I also did 0 user research. I haven't learned from the first experience. We built an event recommendations platform similar to that of Songkick or SeatGeek, if you've seen those before. So that was in 2012. And we made a little bit more progress and got a little bit more in terms of usage, but still the monetization, the marketing that came, we were way under our head in entrepreneurship. And what I decided to do is stop all those businesses and get a job and graduate. And in 2014, I graduated from the University of Glasgow. And that started my second episode, where I was learning from other people on how to build world-class products. I was lucky to get a position at Cohort. As you can see the photo here, there's about 50, 60 people. It's an Edinburgh-based company that we're building mobile apps for Skyscanner, FanDuel, Thunder Life, and clients like that. They built the Fringe app as well. So I was in a position of product manager, and I was basically working in a small team, building products from scratch or iterating existing products, and learning basically the ropes of how to build a product, how to validate assumptions, how to experiment, how to design, what's a good user experience, and so on. So that was a crash course. So Cohort actually got acquired by one of our clients, FanDuel, and then I got an offer to join the founder of this agency in his next startup adventure. So as you can see in the photo on the bottom right, we have a unicorn on our wall, because our ambition was to build a unicorn-based company, something worth more than $1 billion, and our ambitions are high. So we took the process of product management and building world-class products and apply that to the industry of the hospitality and retail. Basically, the assumption there, and I'll tell a little bit more about the story. The assumption was that office workers have Slack or tools like Microsoft Teams, but for hospitality and retail, there's not an equivalent thing. A lot of people are still using WhatsApp. So we were building the Slack for hospitality and retail. And as you can imagine, there's millions of these workers around the world. So basically, as one of the founding members there were 7 of us that were involved in this project. It was like a masterclass on how to build a startup from day one. And by that time, that was my 3rd or 4th venture that I was participating in. And every time I was learning something new. So the ideas were different, but there's something about the process that you can perfect or improve as you go along. So, you know, if you're working on your first venture, it might not be the venture that gets you to success, but it will be a foundation. So as you're working on your startup, you're also working on your own skill set that you might apply in this venture or another, or a pivot. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even if your startup fails, you can take away experiences, and it's certainly the case for me. So after about 3 or 4 years of working with other people or for other people in product management, I felt ready to try another startup go and hopefully be a little bit more successful and make fewer mistakes. So the startup I founded after the hospitality industry startup was Prodsite, and I basically took one of my own ideas that I had as a product manager or problems I had as a product manager and used that as a foundation to build a startup. So my problem was when we built this mobile app for hospitality workers, we were getting lots of feedback via support channels and other feedback. And we were getting, because it was a B2C app, we were getting more content, more requests, more suggestions than we were able to internalize and process. So I was like, what if we could automate this process for brands much larger than us? Would there be something in that? Would that create value? So that was the initial thesis. I took a very robust experimentation approach to test every assumption, because the last thing I wanted to do is fail again and come back and get a job with my tail behind my legs. So I'm gonna go into what experiments I've designed. I'm gonna share them shortly, but I was trying to avoid mistakes this time around, and I was more successful, right? So I was able to hire a team of people. I raised close to $1 million in investment. We got customers around the world. Got featured in TechCrunch. And as part of that experience, also moved to London to be closer to VCs and customers and hopefully kind of make something out of this experience. In 2022, we were approached by 2 companies that wanted to acquire Prodsite and continue the journey as part of their product offering. I ran a competitive process with advice of our investors, and we're able to sell Prodsite for a 7-figure sum, a life-changing money for me, and then continue that journey at their company. So Playbox is a software company that builds quality assurance and workforce management software for contact centers. So if you imagine brands like Twitter, Turo, Spetty Betty, Just Eat, all of those were their customers, and we were embedded in their contact centers. So it was a great opportunity, not just to sell my company and have a dot in that experience, but also continue to roll out our product to an audience that, actually is really hard to reach. Getting these kinds of customers definitely proven challenging for me on our own. So Playbox was a Colombian company, Colombian startup with an acquisition in Australia, an office in the UK, and all the leadership team in the US following the investment they raised. It was a Series B company, raised about $30 million and about 270 people. So as you can imagine, going from a team of 4 to a team of 270 was another learning experience, seeing how product is built at scale. We had 15 product teams, 15 product managers, close to 200 engineers. So it was a very different kind of scale. So I kind of jumped across maybe a few years of what Prodsite could have been potentially, and seen how product works at scale, and obviously took some lessons away. And just shortly, maybe a couple of months ago, I left Playbox, and I'm now helping startups build world-class products as an independent consultant or a startup advisor. And here's why I'm here today, to hopefully share some lessons with you all and help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made as a first-time founder, or at least, make you think about some of the aspects that could be important or make or break your startup. Cool. So I'd love to learn a little bit about your stage. So I have created a very short survey. I have 3 questions that you can answer through this website. I think you might have done last week. So if you could all try and go to menti.com and enter this code and complete the survey, I really appreciate that. And then I'll share the results with everyone. I can see some results coming in already. That's great. Claire, are these auto updating or do I need to refresh? No. Oh, cool. Okay, not surprising. Most are, I guess, in charge of their own company, CEOs or CTOs, but you have people in other functions or roles. That's great. Okay, in terms of revenue, so revenue is kind of a proxy metric for how far along. The more revenue you have, the more you sold, the more contact you had with the market. So it's a good indicator. I can see some companies are pre-revenue, some are just starting to get early traction, starting to sell something, and then 10 to 100K. You know, that's when we were getting close to validating product market fit. You know, it's not a significant amount of money if you're able to charge in this volume, and I can see 7 companies are making more than that. Awesome. No one posts $1 million or pounds a year, which is fair at this stage. Hopefully, we'll get you there next year. All right, and last question: cash runway. Okay, a third of the companies have less than 6 months, so times are tight. Either you need to sell something or get some funding, or cut costs drastically. It's a hard time for startups right now with inflation. Even more so important to focus on what will matter, what will take you to the next stage. 7 companies have 6 to 12 months. That's a decent amount of time. That's the typical startup runway. If you're raising money, or I guess a lot of companies are raising money, they would be operating in kind of 12 to 18-month horizons. 12 to 18 months is comfortable, and 3 companies are profitable, so congratulations. The thing with profitable is a really good position, because then you don't have the worry, but you need to kind of look at how that could impact growth or slow down your growth if you're playing a little too safe. All righty. Thanks for submitting the survey.
Comment on Zoom, just about, I think it was for the roles question of just a comment about only selecting one, which obviously for some people in their startup,
wearing
doing several
hats.
jobs.
Sorry, I made it a single choice, but I guess if you're a CEO, you probably wear multiple hats. Might be a CTO as well at the same time, or a CMO or whatever else, cleaner. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for your answers. So let's jump back into the content. All right. So from week 1, we got answers, and you know, I could obviously see that growth, sales, marketing, revenue generation is on your minds, and that's good. Because a startup is a company that's designed to grow fast, right? If you're not growing fast, you're probably building a traditional business. And it's not a startup. There's nothing wrong with having a traditional business. You know, if you have a barber shop or a sandwich shop, these businesses are not designed to grow. You know, you're taking a very obvious model that's worked many times. You're applying that, you're making a living, you're creating jobs, that's totally fine. If you're building a startup, there's this assumption that you will be growing exponentially, and you need to find a model that will take you there. A typical life cycle of a startup, you know, you launch something, and maybe you will have multiple launches. You launch something, it fails, you launch again. If you have runway, you can do that multiple times. But you know, normally startups have a limited amount of shots. So if you raise some funding or you have some savings, maybe you have 2 or 3 proper shots at something. So you want to minimize the risk of investing too much in one idea without validation. So you launch something, and then the key point is to get the product market fit, because once you're there, you have something, you have a small model of something that's working that you can then scale. And then obviously beyond that, you know, you get into maturity stage, you have a mature product. You know, if you look at large giant companies like Google, Facebook, you know, they have mature products that have been out there for years. They're thinking of what to do next. So Meta, they launched Threads, which is a similar product to Twitter. They need to come up with new ideas of products they can create to extend what they have because they're not content with staying stale. Because if they don't do that extension, they will go down and end of life, and basically atrophy is their future. So companies are always creating and launching new products or improving existing products because the environment's changing, and you can't stay still. But if you haven't reached product market fit, sometimes what companies do, they get a glimpse of product market fit or feel like they have reached product market fit, but maybe it's not as validated as they thought because it's such an elusive thing. And then they're starting to think, okay, how do I get more sales? How do I scale that thing? And without a proper foundation, you have what happened to this building in China, the whole thing falls down. So you invest a lot in growth, you hire marketing, salespeople, and then if the product's not selling, if it hasn't reached product market fit, if you don't have strong retention, you're losing customers, the whole thing topples down. You spend all your money, your runway is gone, and then you have nothing, right? And that's something, you know, that's why it's so important to reach product market fit and really confirm that before taking the next step of growth. That being said, you might do some growth-like activities to validate product market fit. So selling is part of validation, marketing is part of validation, but it's the difference between, you know, let's put rocket fuel into this thing and scale versus let's get a few customers and see if that model works at a small scale. You know, that could be demonstrated in this funnel dynamic. So in the center, you have retention. So these customers staying in the spot. Your marketing or sales would be adding new customers at the top. So you're filling up the pot. And then, you know, some people will move on from your product or they will not like your product and they will churn. So if you have high churn, you're constantly losing water in this bucket. And then you need to add more and more to the top to stay level or generate the same amount of revenue or usage. And then you might be capturing some of that revenue, reinvesting in marketing, or maybe have a nice referral loop where existing customers like the product and help you drive new customers into the funnel. But I think this kind of funnel, you'll probably see a lot of analogies that talk about funnel or adding things on top and then seeing come out. I love this analogy and seeing how important is retention. So product market fit to me is, if you have it, you will have strong retention. So you will be losing few customers. It's impossible not to lose customers. Sometimes, you know, people move on or exchange jobs or whatever. But, you know, it's having that engine cycling through and then if you can imagine adding stuff on top, that's your growth. You know, that pot's getting bigger. It's not getting smaller. So the only thing that matters is getting to product market fit. You know, once you got there, you have other challenges to worry about. And that's Mark Andreessen from A13Z, a famous prominent VC. And I agree with him. Okay, so how long does it take to reach product market fit? It actually varies. So some companies in this list have achieved it in a few months. They launch something, they hit the nail on the head. Maybe they have some unique insight. Maybe they have some assumptions validated from before. They built the thing and it really got traction. And then their problem is growth. Like, how do they grow from there? And some other companies took a long time, like Miro took a couple of years, it seems. Figma took close to 5 years from the initial formation of that company to reach product market fit. So there's not a single version of product market fit. It varies from company to company. You need to find what it is for you and how to measure that. So how do you know you have product market fit or you don't? So you probably don't have it if you aren't growing. So your sales are either stale or you're getting kind of occasional sales. You don't have, you know, a recurring model or a playbook to acquire new sales. Selling is hard. You probably don't have a product market fit. If you have customers in your product and they're churning quickly at a high rate, I would say more than 5% a month is high churn. Anything under 5% is probably manageable. Because if you extrapolate 5% monthly, you know, if you're losing 5% a month, you probably lose about 40% a year. So you don't want to be losing more than half your customers in a year. And then if your customers don't care, like on a quality level, you speak to them, they're like, this product is cool, but it's not part of my workflow. It's not essential to me. I could be using these alternatives. You probably don't have product market fit, or the market in which you got product market fit is not the right market. It's not a good market. And on the flip side, if you're growing 20% month over month, you can see sales compounding and accelerating. If your customers aren't churning, they love your product, they're staying, they're using it, you have high usage, it's easy to sell, it's flying off the shelves. And if they refer friends or colleagues, they're putting their own personal reputation behind your product. These are good signs. So you might be onto something here. So a question to the audience. So we're going to try this. I've never done this hybrid thing. So we have some people in the room, also people connecting online. Have you reached product market fit? Do you think you're getting close? Do you think you're far away? How do you think about product market fit? I'd love to hear from the audience.
I think initially when I started my business, I had an API that I was trying to sell, and it was really difficult to sell. Whereas now we've developed it into a widget and a co-branded website solution. And actually that's pretty simple to sell, and we're getting good feedback. So I think now we're getting to the point where we've got product market fit, but we've just got our first clients on board. So I think continuing to monitor that over time will be important too.
That's cool. That's cool. Congratulations on that. Okay, so I have one from Andrew. So I'm going to make it bigger. Our users like us, and we probably have product market solution fit, but the NHS buyers are not procuring our solutions, so probably not product market fit. Yeah, so sometimes you have a difference between buyer and customer. So users might love your product, but not the customer. Or if you have a marketplace, maybe there's like two sides of it. You need to find product market fit on all aspects if you have that kind of situation. So it sounds like it's one of those. You have 0% churn, but PMF is dynamic, so we're always chasing it. That's right. Actually, you can reach product market fit and you can lose it as well. So it's not like you got it and then you don't make any changes to the product and you sell it forever. Zero churn, sometimes if you have few customers, so the denominator or whatever is low, you have this very choppy churn, so you might not have it for 9 months and then it happens. If you have more customers, if you kind of tested your thing at scale, you might see they're getting more data points that are become more reliable. So it might be one of those. Okay, let's move on. Thank you everyone for your answers. There'll be more opportunities to contribute and ask questions as well. All right. Cool. So some of the ways of measuring product market fit, there's qualitative and quantitative aspects. So, speaking to customers qualitatively, so that would be not statistical, not numeric, getting positive feedback, getting expressions of, this is a huge problem for me. I encounter this problem every day. Things like that, they give you a qualitative sense that you have something of value. If you have sales pipeline and you're getting huge logos, you're getting big councils, or might be healthcare providers, it might be big brands. The more impressive, the larger the clients, that can be a sign that you're selling something of importance, because they have a lot of employees. Solving a problem for one of those clients is huge, and then you have repeatability with similar organizations. If you have a lot of, you can sell products to small customers as well. There's nothing wrong with that. But the more impressive your clients, the more it means that you have something of value and you're solving a big problem. Testimonials, reviews, referrals, all of that's helping. On the quantitative side, you can look, obviously revenues, businesses, sometimes we forget that, especially in the US, there's the sense a startup needs to raise a lot of money. If there's a lot of money, then they're successful. And revenue is a secondary thing. But at the end of the day, businesses are created to create revenue. If you have social enterprise, you probably still want to generate revenue so you can fund the thing and grow it as well. And I think now companies are coming back to the basics and starting to value revenue again. I would say, like, if someone is willing to pay that's probably as good as 100 people saying they have a huge problem, but they're not paying, right? The actual mechanics of your sales motion, so conversion rate from funnel step to funnel step, like the faster it is, the more smooth that is, the more it means that you have something that might be working. If you're looking, sometimes you have this thing, one thing is to sell it, but you sell it to this big buyer, big executive, and then they have their team using it. So you have hundreds of employees using something, or maybe it's a B2C product. You might look for proxies for product market fit in their usage. You need to think what usage constitutes product market fit for you, what kind of behaviors you want to see. Is it a weekly use product? Is it a daily use product? Is it something you expect people to use every few hours, like a messaging product? You need to find what it is for your product, and then just be honest with yourself. If it's a daily use product and you're getting weekly engagement, this thing is not working. You need to do something, change something, so you get daily engagement, or you need to change your idea, right? So sometimes we like to fool ourselves that we've reached something or it's like moving in a positive direction, but it isn't. So being honest with yourself is a big part of understanding what product market fit is, because it's not like a definitive quantitative thing. It's a range of signals that come together to give you the sensation, and only you can judge whether that's product market fit or not, or if you're getting close or not. Other things, retention, as I said, very important. If the product's working, people are going to be using it on a regular basis as you expect, and they're not going to be churning away or churning at a low percentage. So that's good. NPS is a hit and miss. So it's trying to quantify a feeling. It's a survey, a net promoter score can be a good metric to have on the side of something. I wouldn't use that as the only dimension. Let's say you have poor retention, lots of customers are churning, it's hard to sell, but you have a high NPS score. There's many ways to game that score. So just take that with a pinch of salt. And then AARR, so these are pirate metrics, the funnel metrics. So as people are, as you're acquiring them, activating them, retention, referral, and revenue, like how that's stacking through your funnel. And those metrics in between each stage can also tell you a lot about the health of your model at that small scale. Cool. So hopefully that gave you some idea of how you can measure what metrics or qualitative signals will work for you. Will depend on your specific idea. Now I'm going to share a little story on how I was experimenting towards product market fit. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Run past that. So Net Promoter Score is a survey you send. You might have seen one of those surveys that says, how likely are you to recommend this product to your colleague or friend? And then they give you a score from 0 to 10. If 10 is really good, you're probably a promoter. If you're kind of in the middle, you're a neutral person. And then if you leave a score less than 6, I believe, you're a detractor. So that means you probably would tell against using your product to a friend or a colleague. So it's a very simple survey. You can sometimes leave a comment to justify what score you chose. The problem with NPS is people have different ideas of what products they would recommend to friends or colleagues. Some people say that they don't recommend products because it's not their personality. Whilst other people, always share stuff and they would choose a higher rating. So you can read. I think the feedback is interesting. The qualitative comments people leave, they're interesting to read. I wouldn't put much weight on the score itself, but that could be like part of a mix of metrics that you track. I hope that clarifies the question. All right. So experimenting, you've probably seen this build, measure, learn loop. So you build something, you put some metrics or tracking in that, you see how that's working, and then use that to learn or build another iteration of your product, and you repeat until you hopefully reach product market fit and beyond. So I'm not going to go into this. You can read the Lean Starter book, and I'm sure you covered that in previous sessions. And yeah, I've been spinning around this loop quite a few times. And another concept that Andy introduced last week was the PMF narrative. And that's another way to bring structure to your journey towards product market fit. How do you capture what needs to be true for you to reach product market fit. So it's like a thesis or hypothesis about what needs to be true for your startup to work. You might be confident about the problem to solve or the target audience. So you've done some experiments, you've done some customer research, but maybe your value proposition needs work. Or maybe you build something that works, but competitors are doing it better. So you need to think about how you're going to create that edge. So you can have a number of assumptions across each of those 6 dimensions and validate them systematically. So I'm going to go over my own experience. Obviously, this is retrospective. I had to think through what I've done. I don't have all the assets with me anymore, but hopefully that's an accurate representation of how I experimented a prod site to de-risk the core assumptions that were underpinning this idea. So my product market fit narrative at prod site was, we have customer insight being lost amongst support conversations, right? So companies cannot learn from this feedback because there's too much of it. So that was the problem thesis. And I was targeting product managers at startups. That was a persona I was. So I could relate to this persona, and I got some validation there. And then the value proposition would be, we will automate the support ticket analysis, and that will create value. That will unlock the insight that's trapped in this data. That's the value. And then the competitive edge would be that we do the automation, but the customer can control the themes or the topics to personalize the analysis. It's not like a cookie cutter solution. And that's going to be our edge. And we're going to do free trials. We're going to do self-onboarding. We're going to market through app stores. So these support platforms like Intercom, Zendesk, they have their own app stores. So we could list there and hopefully get some tractions early on. And then we're going to monetize, we're going to sell some SaaS plans, monthly and annual subscriptions. So that was the thesis for prod site. So now I had to extract my riskiest assumptions from that and then validate them each with experiments. Before we go into how I did the experiments, I'm going to tell you what the point where I felt we had product market fit the prod site. So we had about $250,000 in ARR, about 30 customers. We were converting 50% of trials or pilots into customers. So that conversion rate showed me that, if you show the value, customers, they will buy. We had less than 5% monthly churn, which was good. You're starting to steal customers from our more established competitors. There were companies that had over 10 million pounds in investment. There's 60 employees. And we were like a 3-4 person startup. Stealing customers away when it came to renewal, that was a big sign to us that we have something that's better and we're on something. And in the process, I created and trashed 5 MVPs and hundreds of product iterations within the last version that we ended up using. So just to show that it's not enough to launch one MVP, we'll probably have to do many more. If you're lucky, like Sprig from the previous slide, you might hit it lucky, but just expect to do many more. At least it took many tries for us. So riskiest assumptions for prod site were, we will be able to get access to the sensitive customer support data. If customers won't give us access to this data, there's no point in trying because we stop there. We cannot provide any value. We cannot analyze anything without access. That was my riskiest assumption. Then I assumed that we will create enough value through this analysis for people to be worth paying monthly. And then the third assumption was technical, that we can actually automate this process and still provide value. Okay, so the first experiment was underpinning. So you can see it's like a Jenga. So my first assumption would be the lowest Jenga. So if it's not there, if it's broken, the whole tower falls down. That's how I like to think about assumptions. So let's validate the risky assumption block. The hypothesis, we're going to do the canvas later, and you'll be able to try your own experiments. But the riskiest assumption is customers will give access to sensitive support data. I believe that offering a way to export conversation from one of the tools, was called Intercom, in a CSV format, will provide enough value so that customers grant me access to this data. And then I wanted to do that in less than a month, so something quick experiment. So the setup of our experiment was you will create a web-based tool for exporting intercom conversations to CSV format, and we'll charge a small fee. So as a self-taught developer, I built this tool in about a month. And the proposition was very simple. Connect with this intercom support tool, and then you can export your CSV. And there was actually a fee. It was from $5 per month to some bigger plans based on volume. And after launching this thing, within about, I would say 2 months, we had 10 customers, or more than 10 customers, that not only connected their support tool, but also paid for the service. So it's like, yes, okay, so nothing to worry about there. People, if providing enough value, will be able to connect. So that assumption was validated. And I was also able to access new customers to speak to ask why they were exporting this information, what type of analysis they were doing. So I would be able to learn about the next step of where I can create value. So the next step, this one is validated. I need to validate the next assumption. The next assumption is whether people will pay anything for this thing. So experiment number 2 was, my hypothesis was that producing a customer insights report without any effort from the customer. So, they give us the data and then we extract the insights somehow magically. They will pay me at least $100 for the service within a month or less. So another small experiment. And the setup here was, I will create a PDF report by hand based on the reading 1,000 most recent support interactions, and I'll charge $100 for that. And I reused the prior experiment to get access to the data, and it became part of this experiment. And because the PDF, I could start building that only after someone paid me for the service. It only took me a week to set up the basic template. So in about a week, I got a customer who paid me $100. It was a company in the US. So it kind of partially validated because I got the payment. So there was something interesting enough for them to pay for this. But in their case, I got a new learning about my target market. So they had there was a B2B product and they had a low volume of customer interactions. And those trends were not changing much. So the value was relatively low. So I knew that I need to look for larger customers that have perhaps B2C brands that have lots and lots of users and customers. So I got an insight that took me on a slightly different direction in terms of target market. So I was updating my PMF narrative based on the insights I got from this experiment. So you need to be kind of open to learning, not just validating the thing, but seeing what surrounding information can capture to get you on the right track, hopefully. So because this experiment was inconclusive, I needed to build something a little more trustworthy that would create more value. It's a difficult one, so there's no easy way. With enterprises, what I found is they will be very sensitive about giving data. So whilst I was able to get access to data in, let's say, smaller startups, when we got to enterprise, that assumption had to be retested in a different way. If you can limit requiring access to people, data, or things from enterprise that requires internal approval, that will make it easier for you to access and experiment with. So thinking about how can you make progress with your experiment without asking for too much from the enterprise is the first good step. And the second one, with the enterprise, is about relationship building. So getting introductions into these organizations, being seen as a trusted party will open you more doors than kind of coming in cold as a complete stranger. So that's where networking can play a big part, getting introductions from perhaps ex-employees, coworkers they used to work with, or other friends. And then the third thing is, once you have a bit more traction, let's say with smaller customers, not enterprise customers, you can then leverage trust that you built up by having a product kind of already having progress as opposed to trying something completely new with an enterprise. So building trust is important. These are just 3 aspects I would suggest trying. Hope that was helpful. All right, so now we're still on the experiment, on the assumption, the second assumption about will people pay for this thing? But I wanted to make more progress, create something more robust so people had a sense that it's not just a PDF report some guy typed up in his bedroom, but it's something that feels like a product. So hopefully I would get more signups on that thing and be able to charge monthly, not just a one-off fee. But keeping in mind that B2C customers might be better for this. So automatically uncovering insights from support conversations will generate recurring subscriptions within a month or less. So that was the hypothesis. And then I built a web app that looked like it would be a dashboard or reporting dashboard that would analyze and display these insights. But behind the scenes, I was manually still reading the conversations and tagging, applying tags and labels to them so that there would be something, the data would be showing up in the UI. You will find in experimentation that building complicated, technologically challenging backend processes is typically, you can hide behind that in the early days. It's sometimes called Wizard of Oz. So you're kind of a robot, a human dressed as a robot doing stuff behind the scenes. And then you're just putting it out there. Looks like a product, feels like a product. And then, you know, if it's getting traction, then you can build out the backend process, which will take probably a long time. So this one took a little bit longer. I'm not very good at front-end development, but I built this thing, and behind the scenes, I was tagging stuff. Then I got an intern to do this on an hourly basis to help me out with more customers. But the important thing here is I wanted recurring subscriptions. I wanted people to say, I'm going to be paying for this $50 or $100 or whatever every month, as long as I'm getting this value. So I built a thing, I built a landing page. It looked like a product. It had charts and graphs. And I had a pricing plan. So the more conversations you want to automatically analyze, the more you need to pay. So I had some customers paying between $50 to $300 a month for this thing. And behind the scenes, obviously, I was analyzing everything. It was becoming a bit of a pain, but that was fine because I was validating stuff. So within a couple of months, we got 10 recurring customers. That was about $1,000 a month in revenue. And at that point, I felt that if I automate this thing behind the scenes, people will probably buy this. I'll be able to scale to 100 customers and beyond. So the next step, we had to bite the bullet and build something behind the scenes. I had to start automating some stuff because that was my third assumption, right? So I validated people will pay for this value, they will get access, but I didn't know if I was able to automate this thing. So that was the technical assumption we had to validate. And that's the fourth experiment I want to share. I've done many more after that, but in the fourth experiment, we built a process that would extract keywords and topics from a body of text without any human intervention. And the first version of that took about 2 months for a data scientist. The analysis wasn't good. I got some paying customers, but analysis wasn't good. And that's where we had to go deeper and deeper into technical engineering to make this process better. So it was close to the human analysis I was doing by hand, which was not scalable and not profitable, right? So there was a curve of experiments where we tried to make the analysis better and then hopefully charge people and get more customers using it to validate that. So it was inconclusive, but a bazillion experiments later, we were able to, as I said, start stealing competitors, customers, and generating more revenue and kind of have something that felt solid. It took a few years to get there. But all three assumptions were eventually validated using this experimentation approach. And the key takeaways before we wrap for a break. So as you're experimenting with stuff, you're getting more conviction. So you speak to more customers, you maybe get some data from your experiments, and you feel like, okay, this thing is working. Until you get those signals, keep the build small. Always think, how can I make this even smaller? How can I get an experiment in 1 week as opposed to 1 month? And then as you get more conviction, then build a bigger version. And don't be afraid to throw away stuff that you built. to get a learning, because learning is more important than traction. So what's important at this stage before product market fit is not generating or charging someone 10,000 pounds, but the learning you're going to get about how you're going to charge 100 million pounds, once you scale this thing. So it's the learning that matters before the traction. Be ready to throw stuff away. I threw out at least 5 experiments and lots of features and code in the product that became our main foundation. If you get too attached to the code, you'll have something what's called sunk cost bias, where you're being crippled by the stuff you have, and you're kind of like building walls around yourself. You're unable to innovate because you're so attached to the thing you invested time and effort. But if you think about it, you have your runway, you can only build from here. So you cannot get your money back or your time back. You can only do stuff with what you have. So throwing away stuff sometimes is what frees you to progress beyond where you are. And be ready to be wrong. So many of those experiments were inconclusive, or we didn't quite get the thing. But as long as you're learning, you'll be slowly iterating towards the thing that will hit product market fit and beyond. Okay, so I'm going to open up some questions. I don't know how much time you have. I think you're a little bit over. But if someone has questions, I'm happy to open the floor.
Okay, so yeah, if people on Zoom want to unmute, we'll be able to hear you in the room, or you can type and I'll read them out. Anything in the room?
So were there any insights where you felt, yeah, you're upon something, but they were not value generating or revenue generating? So how do you usually keep focused on the ones that are revenue generating and not that would generate value, but you still think there is based on the market experiments?
Well, as I said, having someone to pay for something, for some value is better than 100 people saying that they will pay, but not actually pay. So a lot of my experiments were about putting something out there and saying, will you pay for this? Here's where you enter credit card details. If people are not paying, if they're hesitating, that means they're not ready to pay. That means the value you're offering is not worth paying, or there's another point of friction there. So with every experiment, you're trying to do the quantitative sides, like, okay, will X number of people pay? So that's your data, numbers, yes or no, either they pay or not. But there's also the qualitative aspect. You need to speak to them and say, okay, I put this out there, I'm trying to build this thing. I want to make sure I'm on the right track. Why didn't you pay for this thing? How often do you have this problem? And you basically try and capture the human side or the reasoning, and that's your learning. And then that insight will help you inform where the problem might be. Maybe it's some kind of compliance thing. Maybe they need to get approval. Maybe it's not a frequent problem for them. So never just do the data or the numbers. Always look for the rationale behind by speaking to customers.
We've got another question on Zoom. So Daniel, who was the person that had to run away with the dog, so sort of in spirit with us here. So when designing those experiments, who from your team did you set them with?
So the first, before we did the experiment with building a data science project where we analyzed the keywords and stuff, I did all of those experiments by myself. So I was just sole founder, building code by myself as best as I could. I'm not a developer, but can do some things. And so there was no one really to discuss with or brainstorm and say, should we do experiment like this or that way? In other teams and other companies, experimentation is not just to get to the MVP or the first few. It happens at every level. So if you look at Meta launching Threads, they've done the same exact process to validate their core assumptions. And some of them might be technical, some of them might be market side. So ideally, if you have a team around you, either it'll be your founders, this will be core work. Designing experiments, creating experiment materials, launching them, and measuring and learning would be, your CTO, CMO, CEO, whatever you have in your founding team, everyone will be working on them, some contributing technical skills, some business insights, and other things. In a traditional product team, you have a designer, some developers, and let's say a product person, product manager, or someone like that. So that trio would be designing and delivering experiments in a structured team. So coming back to the meta example, Thread's initial team was about 12 people. And then towards launch, as they built out stuff, I think they had over 60. But that initial team were designing these small experiments. And then as they got more conviction, they were adding more and more people, expanding the thing.
Another one online from Rick. So he says, the view that learning is greater than traction is refreshing and one I share, but how common is this view among potential investors?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the investors I managed to attract for ProdSite, I would like to class them as smart money, smart investors that understand these aspects. So angel investors that we got on board were all ex-operators. They were people who built successful startups, typically in the software space. So they kind of know how it goes. They understand the value. Sometimes you have people coming from traditional backgrounds. Maybe someone made money in, I don't know, selling cattle. So they have money to invest, but they don't have any idea how to build software. So, I would probably want to surround myself with investors that understand how to build software and can empathize with what you're going through. Don't try and convince someone, who's 50, 60 years old, that there's another way. It will be very difficult. You'll experience a lot of friction. So try and attract investors that get what you're doing. And certainly in our case, even later on with the VC investors, a lot of the conversations we had at the board level were about, what are we learning? Yes, we're getting some revenue, we're getting customers, but why are people buying this thing? Or why are they churning from their product? Which features are working? What kind of usage metrics we need? How sticky does the product need to be? So they were focusing on the learning because we were not at the growth stage. We're still pursuing product market fit. Yes.
Cool. Maybe take this last question before we go for the break.
Okay.
So Christian has asked, would you apply the same canvas and experiments process to revisit product market fit at intervals if this is suspected to be an issue affecting growth further down the line?
Yeah, so as I said, the product market fit is something you can lose, like your mojo. So I think the way to think about it is you might have an early sign of product market fit. So to yourself or your team might say, okay, we got to this revenue point, or this customer point, this retention point. We feel like we have product market fit. Let's congratulate ourselves. But then as you put pressure on that model, so let's say you have 100 customers, you're trying to get to 1,000 customers. Some of those customers you're going into might be slightly different to the customers you're already sold to. They might have slightly different needs or expectations. Or you might be going up the market, maybe into enterprises after selling to mid-market or SMB or consumers, and they have different requirements. Like I said, with access to data, it's a much trickier conversation than with a smaller business. So I think there's two potential ways. One might be strengthening your existing product market fit and reconfirming that the next level of growth. And another would be saying, hey, actually, we're no longer selling to mid-market, we're selling to enterprise. Let's create a whole new PMF narrative document just for enterprise and see what they would need, what the solution should look like for them, what's their competitive edge in the enterprise segment, and so on. So it's not the same thing. It's selling to a different market segment could be almost like a different product or a sub-product. So thinking about that in a fresh way would definitely be wise. But we're going to try and take some of the, hopefully, learnings from the past session and apply them, right? So a lot of times what happens is people learn about a lean startup or these experimentation canvases, and and do them once for the initial idea, and then kind of get into building things, not thinking about validation. So this is to reinforce this idea that there might be aspects in your product market fit narrative that you're not so sure about, or maybe you're launching a product in a slightly different customer segment, or you want to try a different segment before really narrowing down. And as I said, you have a completely new PMF narrative and lots of new assumptions to test. So what I'd like to do is a little interactive exercise. We have a matrix on which you can place your assumptions. So the first part that this activity will be to write down all your assumptions that you think are important to you. And then the second part will be placing them on this grid. So we have, on one axis, we have certainty, and on the other axis, we have risk. So risk means this assumption really needs to be true for your business to work. Or if it's low risk, it's probably inconsequential. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, your business will still go on because it's not a key assumption. So the reason it's a two-step process is because thinking about assumptions and just listing them down will allow you to capture more. And then you can think about prioritizing them on this matrix, on this grid. So you have 20 minutes, I guess, be a little over time. So maybe we'll try and be a bit quicker. So on sticky notes, just write down all the assumptions, one assumption per sticky note. And if you're doing this online, there's some fake digital sticky notes that you can try and copy and place them on the grid as well. So once you have written down, I would say at least 4 or 5 assumptions on stickies, then start placing them on the matrix in terms of risk and certainty. So the riskiest assumption that you're least certain about would go to the top right of the quadrant, and so on. And then once you've done the initial part in groups of 4, share your assumptions with each other, discuss them, and then explain the reasoning why you feel certain assumptions are important to you. And be open to be challenged. You can ask others, like, why do you think this assumption is riskiest? What do you think about that one? Why are you so certain about that? So try and challenge each other as a way of iterating. And maybe as a result of that, you will want to reorder them. So for the first part, I'll give you, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes to write them down first. Most people in the room, at least, have placed their stickies on the canvas. Cool. So now in groups, let's share the assumptions, starting with the riskiest ones, so top right, and then explain to each other why you think that's a risky assumption, and then switch and have others explain. And don't be afraid to challenge. You know, if you feel like, why is that a risk assumption? The other one should be more risky. Just kind of challenge each other. All right, welcome back, everyone. Sorry. So have you all identified your one riskiest assumption for this process? I hope so, because you will need it for the next exercise. So we're not going to share it with the room yet, but we're going to use the top riskiest assumption that you're least certain about. So underpinning your business, but you maybe haven't done much work on validating it. You're not so sure. And we're going to design a product experiment that will take that assumption and then create something that you can get more confidence in. Cool. So you should have a copy of experiment canvas in front of you or in your workbook. So clone your slide deck to be able to edit that. And in the first, in the top left, just write down your riskiest assumption as the first point, and then design your hypothesis. So what do you believe will happen? So if you have an experiment, what kind of specific action will drive what kind of outcome, and within what time frame? So you don't want the time frame to be too long because you don't have a lot of runway, right? Money's burning every day. So just write down your assumption using the template in the second box. And then the third part is, what are you going to do to experiment that? Are you going to build something? Are you going to create some no-code solution? Are you going to go and speak to X number of people? Whatever it will take, this is where your creativity runs wild. You've seen I've done a number of experiments for ProdSite. There's an infinite number of things you can try and do to validate it. And there's no right or wrong way. Like, it's whatever that's going to take you to the next step towards validating that assumption. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try and design your experiment. And then we're going to have a bit of a discussion. We're going to try and challenge each other again. And then we will design a second version of experiment, maybe a different version, either a different method or a slightly tweaked hypothesis, or maybe a cheaper or faster way of getting the answers that you need to validate this assumption. So you will end up with 2 canvases. And then once everyone's done, we will then maybe ask 1 or 2 people to share their experiment with the group. And then we'll see, maybe we can give each other some advice on how to make it even better. So we have a question from Pete in the chat. He's asking, what forms the qualitative? So qualitative, it's more things like interviews, open-ended surveys, comments, reviews, kind of information that's not numbers or data, not hard data. And quantitative would be something numeric that you can analyze in statistics. Hopefully that helps. So actually, MPS has 2 aspects to it. It has the quantitative part, which is the numeric rating, and also has an optional comment, which would be the qual part. So it's kind of hitting 2 things with 1. So I hope everyone has the first version of their experiment. So now, if you could discuss that in groups of 4, give each other 2 minutes. So just 2 minutes each, go around the room so that everyone gets to share their own experiment. And different people's experiments will inform how you might want to do experiment. Maybe someone has a method that you want to try. And then you can take that away and when designing your second version of the experiment. So let's say maybe 8 minutes for sharing the experiments with each other, so 2 minutes each.
Back now.
Right. Welcome back, everyone, again. So I hope you had good discussions as you were sharing experiments with each other. As we're running a little bit late, so we're going to cut this activity short. So we're not going to do another version of the experiment today, but you can certainly take away insights from others and do it in your own time after using this canvas. One thing I would like to do is ask one of the people who are joining online, come off mute and share their experiment with the group here. So who will be the lucky volunteer?
I can if you'd like. I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Awesome.
I'm not going to get kicked out. A lovely lady comes and tell me to leave the room. So I'll share my screen if you want, or I can't share it. Never mind. So essentially, our top risk, I'll just read it, was that our platform's revenue is based off of percentages, transaction fees of donations to universities and to schools. So the riskiest assumption is the need to garner or to test transaction fee percentages. So the falsifiable hypothesis, we believe that people pay transaction fees when donating to universities. It will drive the revenue model for Forum, and within 2 months, because our aim is to have it implemented by Giving Tuesday in the end of November. So the experiment setup is a payment portal linked to our platform, which is Forum for Giving Tuesday, and then measuring the percentage of donation fees and seeing if donors pay for that transaction fee or they pass that on to the university. So essentially, if you're donating $500, will you pay the extra 5.5% on top of that $500? Will you cover that, or will you say, I don't want to pay that? That's going to get taken off your donation when it's given to your university. And then we would like to have 10 donations processed through the platform by the end of November. So that's what we set up for our test.
Thanks for sharing this, Daniel. Just to make sure I understand correctly, is your experiment to test whether or not people will choose to cover the fees, or is it more generally whether people will donate or not?
So we already know that people donate. to their universities and their schools, because it's like in the UK 1.5 billion last year in terms of donations, and in the US is 60 billion last year. So we know that people are donating, and we know that universities and schools are running it. So it's just trying to test our revenue model and whether people will trust our platform enough to put their money through it.
Okay. And have you thought about testing different percentages on how much you can charge?
I didn't, but that's actually a pretty good idea.
You know, if you get enough volume, enough donations to create a valid experiment, you could try running a few different percentages, maybe like two different tiers, and then kind of do like an A/B or split test. But that requires volume. Just keep mindful of how many data points are you going to be getting to kind of.
We've also in our roadmap we want to test the tipping method, similar to Just Giving, GoFundMe, but that's another kettle of fish.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Sorry we can't hear more of the experiments. I'd love to hear these experiments. So if you want to share after the session with me, I'd love to, be happy to give you some feedback as well, and just see what you're experiencing. I encourage everyone to obviously spend a little bit more time refining these experiments, thinking alternative ways. There's never just one way of validating it. So, obviously encourage you to try and launch these experiments, and hopefully in a month or so have some results to reflect on. Yeah, so we're going to jump into the last session. I appreciate everyone's patience. I know it's a lot of content to cram in. So now we're going to focus on what happens once you have an MVP and maybe you're getting close to product market fit, or you have reached that point, and now you're thinking, okay, how do we align the team? Maybe you hired people, and you want to make sure everyone's moving towards the same direction, right? You're not just experimenting, but you have some continuity. You're making some longer term plans. So it can start feeling more like a business once you get close to product market fit. You have revenue, you have employees, maybe you have investment. Feels like you're a real deal, and that's where you want to have a bit more structure. You also will be seeing lots of ideas come through from various stakeholders. So when you're starting out, it's kind of just your own ideas stewing in your head. When you have customers, they might have suggestions. You might have investors and other entities some more stuff coming inbound than before. So in your specific case, where do product ideas come from? And that's both to the room and the people joining online. You want to come off mute or put it in chat. What are some sources of ideas for product? Oh, okay, of course. Brian, we'll get to you in a second. I'm seeing online, people are saying existing and prospective customers, your own needs, customers. Claire will need your microphone. We have a little question. Competitors launching stuff, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it's some of them are from my own kind of needs, like just from what I would want in the product. And then now, since it's launched, having suggestions from users, like we get regular suggestions every week, and it's kind of a process of like, we can kind of see immediately which ones you think that's a good idea, or we've thought of that already, and then just trying to decide, not obviously wanting to add in every suggestion, but trying to curate them in some way and decide which ones to prioritize.
So kind of being your own customer persona is a good and a bad thing, because it feels like you have a pretty good grasp of what's needed, but you also need to realize you're not a customer, and there might be slight variations in needs, or maybe complete different needs. So still kind of balancing that, but great suggestion from everyone. So there's no shortage of product ideas, and the bigger you grow, the more voices come into the mix. So customers, we must have this feature. Investors, are you adding AI because that's the latest craze? Your engineering team will probably get excited about technology. So like, there's a new version of React came out, like, why don't we upgrade and spend 3 months doing that? Partners offering all kinds of integrations and so on. Or your own shower ideas. You should expand the new market. before you even got the product market fit in your market. So you need to make sure that you don't let the loudest voice drive your product. So, some founders are really susceptible to investor feedback because they want to please investor and get in the next round or whatever. And some want to serve rightfully customers, but customers is not one person. You need to represent the whole group and need to balance out. So what I would say is, once you get to the stage of getting a bit of traction, I would implement a small, light version of a product management process, which could look like a bit like this funnel. So start with product ideas, then you have a method of prioritizing those ideas on a regular basis. So this is a continuous stream of stuff. And then you create a roadmap to align your team around, so everyone knows where you're going. That roadmap will say what you're doing and what you're not doing. And then how you put those things into practice, kind of having a delivery cadence and a discovery cadence to turn those roadmap ideas into real product features. So you take all of those different stakeholders, allow everyone to submit their ideas, and you manage them. You can use a tool like Notion, Jira, spreadsheet. There's specialized tools like Product Board. There's software for this, or you can use something simple. So you're logging all those ideas. So when someone comes to you, like this investor with the AI ideas, you say, okay, we'll consider that. So instead of like taking any action or building anything or committing to anything, you just add it to the list, right? So that becomes your idea repository. And then you can start prioritizing these things. So should we build this feature or we shouldn't? So good reasons to build a feature obviously helps validate your risk as assumption. So you tie it back to that. Maybe you build something so you can access a new market. So Ryan was talking about manufacturers. Can you build something so you can start an interaction with that market? Create some interest point. Like when I did the intercom exporter, when people connected to that solution, I was able to speak to them after. So that gave me access. A good reason to prioritize, it will help you learn about your market. Or maybe some features are so basic, it's kind of like table stakes. So you enter a market, it's like you build a messaging app, it has to have the chat feature, right? You don't need to validate that. It's something you need to pay to play. You need to build that feature. So it's not really up for discussion if you want to operate in that market. So I remember at this hospitality-oriented messaging app, we spent a lot of time and effort in building a great messaging experience to be like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. We were not innovating there. We were just creating baseline expected features like read receipts and nice slick UI and so on, and being really fast. And some bad reasons to prioritize, but very common. And senior people and founders are not immune to that. We need to keep engineers busy. So we hired these 5 engineers. They need to keep working on something. So you haven't done discovery work. You haven't done the thought process. So you throw random ideas at them and they're building you're busy. So it feels like you're utilizing your assets. Or you have this expectation, customers create pressure to ship new features. So maybe you're not able to satisfy everyone, but as long as you have a cadence of features coming out, it feels like you're doing good for customers, whether this feature is successful or not. Or, in enterprise, especially in SaaS, B2B, you have a big customer, maybe it's like 1 of 5 customers, and they feel like whatever they tell you, you will build it for them. But it might be the wrong thing. You might go down a rabbit hole solving for this one customer, but it's not the set of needs that replicate across other customers. So sometimes you need to say no to the big guys. So this is a very simple, you can see I like matrices of different kinds. So again, this has 2 dimensions, effort and impact. So effort's like how hard is it to implement or build? It could be engineering time, it could be design time, it could be thinking time. And impact is how valuable will that thing be for your customers? And impact, the definition of that changes over time. So impact before product market fit, I would say, how is this feature, if you deploy it, how is it likely to validate our riskiest assumptions? that's impact to me. That creates learning and validation and strengthens my base business model. Once you have product market fit, maybe impact is growth. So you're trying to go from 1,000 customers to 10,000, and impact is any feature that will drive that growth. Maybe create a new viral loop or a feature that a lot of people will adopt. That's impact for you. So that changes over time. You need to define what impact means. But basically, the way this matrix works is you get ideas from the board before, whether it's a spreadsheet or a tool, and then you can create a sticky note format or something else, but you're basically plotting them on this matrix in terms of effort and impact. So the things in the top right corner are major projects, basically core fundamental ideas they need to build. So these are probably going to be large investments that will take you a long time to build, but they're absolutely crucial. So think of like a new big set of capabilities, or maybe something for a new target segment. You need to build those things, and they will be expensive. There's no way around it, but they will create a lot of impact. And obviously, the favorite one, the green ones, are quick wins. So lots of impact and low relative effort. So quick little tweaks to your product, existing product, that you can ship quickly, and customers will appreciate and will drive your product forward. And the other two, there's distinction. There's thankless tasks. So basically, costs a lot of effort to build, but low impact. And then there are also things that aren't that costly to build, but also don't have impact. I wouldn't do any of those. So anything on the left-hand side, you should mindfully put them in the appropriate corner in the prioritization exercise. But that's basically saying, like, look, we're not going to do the red things because they don't have impact. Maybe 6 months later, as we reshuffle the board, they could become impactful. Maybe something you learned in the market means that those features have a different priority, but at that point in time, you're not going to do them. So how do you build a roadmap from this? So let's say taking 100 ideas, you prioritize them in the matrix, maybe thrown out some in the red columns, and you have 5 quick wins, you have 5 major projects, so you prioritize something with your team. Involving your team is important here because you're creating a shared understanding of what's important, what's not important. So you don't have this discussion of like, oh, what about my React upgrade? Like, is that impactful or not? You could say relative to other things, it's not impactful for these reasons. We're going to put it here. Maybe when we're 3 versions behind, it will become very impactful and we'll upgrade it. So it's kind of creating expectation management. It gives you a way to manage that conversation without disappointing people or like offending anyone. All right, so what do you do with major projects? So we were talking about experimentation, kind of keeping build costs low, being iterative. But what if something takes a year to build? What I would suggest in that case, you definitely want to have a healthy amount of major projects in your pipeline, especially as your product matures, because otherwise, the quick wins, you will run out of them fast. Like you will identify those things, they're quick to build, lots of impact. You build all of them, and there's nothing else to do, and your product's not moving forward because you're not investing in the core infrastructure or the core capabilities that your customers are expecting. So you kind of become a light version of your product, and competitors are eating your lunch. So the best way to deal with major projects is to sequence them into incremental phases. So, so basically, you take a major project and say, okay, in phase 1, we will deliver this scope. So we'll have these features. And then on this foundation, we're going to build this other thing on top. And then we'll add this third thing or fourth. You can sequence as many times. The smaller the phases, the better. So what that allows you to do is to learn in between the phases. So today, it might feel like your customers would benefit from all 3 or 4 phases. So if you could build them all right away. But what happens if you launch phase 1 and then you learn that that was a dud? Actually, it's not a major project, doesn't deliver impact. You could can the rest of the phases at that point and say, look, we lost a bit of time here, but we learned that's not the right thing. We're going to do this other thing. Or you could learn something in phase 1 that informs the shape of the phase 2. So maybe you don't know exactly what it should look like or what capabilities you have. You learn that in the phase 1 and so on. So let's take an example. So this is something we were building at Playvox, one of the kind of flagship features that I was leading. So we tried to build automation for the quality assurance process in the customer support. So what Playvox does, when you call customer support helpline, they say that they will record your call for training and purposes, right? So we are the software that does the analysis, but that analysis currently is done manually. So someone reads through the transcript, what the agent has said, and then says, okay, they were unprofessional here. They didn't provide the right help for the customer. These are the areas for improvement. As you can imagine, at large volumes, we were analyzing insights of prod site. In the quality assurance space, there's even more work to analyze these interactions for learning and training purposes. So Playvox said, okay, we want to automate this process. This is our major project. And we knew from an engineering standpoint that it's going to take us years to achieve that. So we don't want to spend 2 years building something and then learn whether that was successful or not. We wanted to incrementally deliver something to customers of value and learn in each step. So phase 1, I said, okay, let's build a sentiment report. So we're going to analyze like a very shallow level of analysis, see how the customers are feeling when interacting with agents. That's going to provide some insight. It's not going to fully automate the process, but it's going to help along that way. And then we're going to allow customers to automatically sample some conversations to analyze based on sentiment. So maybe customer was agitated in a conversation, or agent said something that was very negative. So instead of sampling positive interactions, you can take some negative ones into the mix and then have a more reflective picture of what's happened in the support interactions. And in the phase 3, maybe you start automatically scoring and evaluating the work that the humans were doing. So it's crazy AI stuff. So we did an incremental way, and that's how we sequence a major project, learning along the way. Now, so you have this roadmap. How do you build a roadmap on these things? So we've sequenced a big major project into 3 parts, and we also have these quick wins, and we have these red things we're not going to do. So a very popular format for a roadmap, which is this document. It's like 1-page document. It can also be software. I'm going to share some links later. It's basically saying, okay, we're building something now. So these are the features we're building now. And next, in the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to do these other things. So these are high priority things. And then later, we'll get to these other things. And then anything else that's not in the roadmap, we're not doing as far as we're concerned. And the typical timeline for a product roadmap is about 12 months. So with the team, you can say, look, we've gone through the prioritization process, listened to all the ideas. Based on our understanding today, these are going to be the things we're going to be doing. And by the way, each of those things can be experiments that you're learning from as well. But you do want to create a bit of a pipeline so that your team gets excited about what you're building. They see where you're going with your product. So it's not like piecemeal from experiment to experiment. You have a bit of a vision and direction. And then if things change, you can, huddle around together and say, okay, this thing is probably not a good idea anymore. We're going to replace it with this other thing. And that's what a roadmap is going to look like. And an example of that would be, let's do a few quick wins first. So these are the things that are, best bang for buck. And then we're going to do a phase of a major project, maybe phase 1, allow some time to learn from that before building more phases. And then we'll do some more phases and then some new quick wins that we learn about. So that's how I would structure a roadmap. Obviously, what those exact things and sizes and shapes will depend on your product. But this is more of an approach to taking tons of ideas and then filtering through this pipeline process, a light process, into something that you can rally your team around and have a shared source of truth. There's great tools out there for road mapping, AirFocus, ProdPath, ProgBoard, ClickUp. There's more. If you want to create a nice visual product roadmap for your team, if that's the stage you're at the moment, you can definitely try out some of those tools and bring a bit of structure. So a few more road mapping tips. So reiterating the point I shared before, pre-product market fit, you shouldn't really be having roadmaps because you don't know what the next experiment is going to tell you. Maybe you're going to change your target market. Maybe you're going to do a complete pivot. So designing a product roadmap will not be a productive exercise. You don't have a 12-month horizon to plan that much because you haven't learned enough. So you need to focus on learning. Once you get the product market fit, you can then have a bigger, longer-term vision of the product. So learning is impact. Obviously, roadmap, you want that to be the source of truth. You don't want 2, 3, or 4 competing roadmaps floating around. You want to have one official version. This is the latest, and have regular meetings with the team. Oftentimes, people forget what's on the roadmap, or to try and squeeze other things onto the roadmap. So you want to make sure you over-communicate. Maybe have a monthly meeting and say, look, this is our roadmap. It's the same as it was last month, but we've done those other things, and then we're going to do these things. And you can start shuffling things around as needed, or just reconfirm that that's the plan still. You definitely want to involve your team in the road mapping process. Once you start adding employees to your team, you can start creating a dynamic, probably through accident, of the decision makers or management and the rest. And by involving your team in the road mapping process and having the structured process, what you can do is create more shared ownership, right? So instead of the management or founders going away in their meeting room and deciding everything that's going to be built and then telling the team, you can have them involved in the idea gathering process. These are all the ideas we're getting. Which ones do you guys think will drive impact? In the prioritization, you can do the matrix exercise together. You can say, okay, let's take our 20 top ideas and put them on the matrix and see where they fall in terms of impact and effort. And then also you could design the product roadmap together as well. That's how you're going to get buy-in. And in startups, as hard as they are, the last thing you want is kind of politics or resentment to creep in. And don't skip prioritization. Sometimes it's so tempting to take an idea that someone shared, a customer shared, and then you skip right past the roadmap and you do that next. But what about the other stuff you said you're going to do in the next 6 months, and the stuff that you're going to do later? Like, there's a constraint. Like, you can't do everything. You have a pipeline that you can fill with work. Anything that you add will have an impact that you will have to remove some of the items, because it's a trade-off. It's not a zero-sum game. And then with the roadmap, you want that to be relatively stable. So you don't want to be changing roadmap every day or every week. Sometimes you have to adjust it, but that kind of becomes a staple, a strategic document that everyone is looking towards. If you change it daily, people will not respect it because they know something else will going to go on the roadmap tomorrow. Or if you never change it, then maybe you're losing an opportunity to incorporate the learnings you're getting from your feature launches into your strategy. Cool. And now, how do you build? So this is a very deep topic. Engineers and product managers and Scrum Masters, there's lots of discussions of Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and different kinds of processes. So this is going to be a very shallow, we're just going to touch upon a version of this I would suggest. So once you have engineers and designers and product managers on the team, you want to create recurring processes that basically determine the rhythm of your company, or at least your delivery capacity. You don't want to have engineers work on something for a month and then stop for 2 months. You want to make sure they're building a delivery muscle. They're constantly able to ship stuff. They have the code base in front of their mind. Everything's fresh. So it's like being a sportsman, right? Like, the more you practice, you want people to be practicing constantly and delivering stuff to customers. So what that means is you have to have a process of deciding what you're going to be building in parallel with delivering. So delivering would be the development track, and deciding would be the discovery track. And those things could run in parallel, and you could even have the same teams doing both activities in parallel, or you could have fractions of the teams doing a bit of that and a bit of that. But you constantly need to be deciding what's going to come on a roadmap. So what you're building now in the first column on the roadmap, that's your development track. So you already know what the solution is going to look like, what assumptions are going to be testing, how you're going to be measuring. You know what that thing is. It's concrete. So you're building. But what about the stuff that's in the later, in the next column, which is 3 to 6 months? You need to go through all the work to decide what is it going to be testing, how it's going to look like, evaluate alternatives, evaluate technical implications. So that's your discovery track. So what you want to be doing, you want to be discovering stuff today that you will be building in next 2 to 3 months. And then you deliver that thing, and then you have other stuff ready already in the pipeline. And all of the experimentation goes into that. So discovery is about experimentation, and delivery is about putting production-ready code into your product if it's software. There's much more depth to this, but I just wanted to give you an idea. If you're interested in this process in more detail, if you have engineers and designers, program managers, you want to put some structure around them, Google dual track Scrum or just Scrum, and you will be able to learn much more about the subject. Shall we dive into the product-led real quick?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try and be quick. So before product market fit, you're spending most of your effort improving the product. Once you reach product market fit, it switches towards the product's kind of fine. You're still working on it, but now you're focusing on building growth, scalable acquisition channels. So your focus starts shifting, and you're spending more time on growth. Product-led growth is a relatively new concept. It's kind of basically putting your product at the center of your growth, especially in B2B. It used to be that product is sold separately by all salespeople and then kind of plopped in front of the customer and hope that they like it. Product-led growth allows you to have customers experience the product, like the product, and then make the purchase decision. It's kind of flipping that. Some great B2B companies that are product-led, Airtable, Slack, Figma, you probably use some of those tools. So you know that they offer a free trial, you can experience the product before you buy, and that's what product-led actually means. In a B2C space, you have Pinterest, all the social networks are product-led. You're basically trying the product, you're experiencing the value, and then maybe there's some monetization at the end or a purchasing decision. Recently, we've seen the value or the quantity of product-led growth that went public. So startups that started and then became public companies, so large companies essentially, increase exponentially. So whilst in 2012, there was only one, LogMeIn, that was a public PLG-based company. Now there's at least 15 and probably more. That's just the data up to 2018. So it becomes important. So what does the funnel look like for PLG? It's your pirate metrics that you've probably seen before. So you can do PLG at any level. You can do product activities at acquisition. You can do stuff for activation, retention, referral, and revenue at any point in that. And I'll show you some examples. You can apply product-led growth when you're designing your product. So as a mini case study, we're going to look at Calendly. Have you guys ever used, probably received a link to schedule a call or something. So Calendly, at the acquisition level, they baked in a mechanism that allows them to acquire new customers without any sales or marketing. So when you want to book a call with me, I send you a link, and you see it's powered by Calendly. So you learn about the tools, that's acquisition. You can start using the tool based on me just using the tool and sending you a link, and then you become a referral in the funnel. So they're hitting 2 points in the PLG funnel with one tactic. So the product's marketing itself. At the activation stage, they basically made it easy to activate, to become a customer Calendly. It's kind of like a one-click sign up with a social login. It's free to have a pre-plan. It's always free, so it doesn't become paid. You can upgrade later, but it's very easy to become a customer Calendly, start using it yourself. Retention. So the way they baked in retention into their product is like, I set up my Calendly link, I connect it to my calendar, and I don't have to do any more maintenance for my Calendly, right? It's the people that are booking calls with me or yourself, if you're using Calendly, they're driving retention. So I have to invest very little effort as a customer of Calendly to keep using the tool. Because every time someone books a link without any action from me, will drive me to use more Calendly. So that loop never ends. It's constantly more Calendly, because I'm getting meetings through it. And obviously, as I'm experiencing so much value for free, I'm already getting people to book calls for me. I might see, obviously, the fundamental value, the base value of the product, but now I'm thinking, maybe I need these advanced features. So there was a very gradual and natural upgrade path for me to pay more to Calendly. And again, I will need to do very little effort to keep using the tool and keep paying them $15 a month. Another great tactic is expanding from single use to multi-user mode. So I might have started using Calendly for myself, but once my team, let's say in a company, has seen that I'm using this tool, I can now upgrade and start sharing the calendars and booking on a team basis. So they're expanding from one person to now an entire department or an entire company. So how to apply product-led growth in your startup? You always start with retention. If you do nothing else, by embedding product-led growth techniques into your retention part of the funnel, you will basically build out the core value. If you don't have strong retention, there's no point in doing any other work because your product is fundamentally not useful if it doesn't have retention. So retention means it's constantly used, it's valuable to people, and once you've established that it's valuable, you can then say, okay, how do I make it easier for people to become customers? That's the activation step. How do I do something where, people can learn about the tool and become customers, an acquisition step? How can I generate more referrals on the basis of this fundamental value that we have proven by retention, and so on? Always start with retention. And then what was interesting is in the survey from week 1, customer retention only came 8th in the list of priorities, though, for the next 3 months. So this is actually quite a common thing. A lot of founders want to generate more sales revenue, but it's really what's going to drive the sales and revenue is having strong retention. The product is good. It's proven by great retention. So it's easier to sell. It's easier to retain customers, easier to grow revenue. It's easier to upsell. I would highly encourage everyone, hopefully after this session, to reconsider whether your retention is strong enough and whether that should be at least an equal focus for you as sales and marketing is. So how to do this? First, you identify what a retained user means for your product, and that differs from product to product. And then second step, easy, is to personalize the experience to make sure that people keep coming back. This is the easy part. So how did we drive user retention? This is a very quick example from the product I was working on, for Prod site. It's a team communication product. Basically, the first retention was user opens the app at least once a week for 4 weeks. If they continue the cycle for 4 weeks, we believe that they're now activated and they're a retained user. Of course, they can fall off later, but that would be churn. So we embedded 2 product-led techniques that required no external suggestion or tweaking or sales or talking to customers. Basically, part of the product was a work schedule, which changes every week or sometimes multiple times a week. And that's your work rota. So it's a digital version of the rota. So anytime the schedule changes, there's a notification that comes out to the team. And then people go into the app to check what the change was. And then they might do other changes. Maybe they want to swap a shift with someone. So there's another change and there's another notification. So that became a viral loop that drives retention for us. So instead of users not checking the app for weeks, we have an embedded mechanism that creates motivation and also a trigger to keep coming back in the app. And another loop that's very similar, as people come in to check their schedule, sometimes they would post a message, say, oh, thanks for uploading the rota, or did you guys check in the back? You know, we want to clean up that whatever box or whatever. And then that message creates a notification, and then more people come in from the team, and then they might post other messages, or at least open the app. And that's how we're driving weekly retention. How do you define retention? That's maybe a question for back home to reflect on that. What does retention mean for your startup? If you want to learn more about product-led growth, much more detail than we have been able to do today, these are 3 resources and individuals that are prominent in the space. They have lots of experience and advice on how to think about product-led growth. Q&A. Not all the time. So just to leave you with some key takeaways. Growth only comes after product market fit. You cannot grow until you have product market fit. Validating PMF assumptions systematically helps you make progress in an incremental way before you run out of money. And once you reach PMF or approaching towards it, you can use a roadmap to align your team to drive towards it. One last point, consider product-led growth as an engine, as a fundamental thing that could make acquisition easier, activation easier, retention easier, as you embed these techniques right into your product. Thank you so much for listening, and sorry for going over. You can email me at any time, tadas@laboris.com, or visit my website. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you today.
So I'll mention very quickly, I mentioned this last week, but yeah, hot desking is available in the hubs. So please do just let me and Molly know, if you do want to attend any of the hot desking sessions. We've got co-working day coming up next week. And I was also thinking that with us having to skip some of the stuff there, that maybe facilitating some group conversations might be a good idea. So I will follow up with that on the community platform. These are events, we'll shove them onto the community platform as well for you. Week 4 is on the 10th of October. So like I say, next week is our kind of break week where you can come along and co-work together, and we're going to be in Aberdeen. And then just wanted to mention to you, I've been a little bit teasing with some of the information around this, but I just wanted to put the date in folks' calendars for the final session. It's going to be an extra long session starting around 11 a.m. Lots of networking opportunities. We're going to be getting some folks to do pitching, opportunities to chat to investors and hear from founders. There are nice snacks. We have sampled the snacks. Yeah, just an opportunity to really come together and celebrate. It's a little bit something special. And just to flag that if the cost of travel is a barrier for anybody, then please just get in touch with me and we'll see what we can do about that. And then not next week, 2 weeks today is our 4th week, and we move into the case study sections. And so that'll be us up in Aberdeen. And I think that's the fastest I can talk. So thanks very much, everybody. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.